These are the 10 most exclusive regions across Texas where the billionaires live, and they only get crazier as we move. We're talking about a Fort Worth village where an average house is worth $2.5 million, a Houston neighborhood that literally made retail illegal, so wealthy families never have to see a coffee shop, and a Dallas enclave where families pay $4 million just to access a school district. Let's get into it. Number 10. Westover Hills, Fort Worth. Let's start with Westover Hills because only 580 people live here, and homes are valued at an average of $2.5 million in a town that barely qualifies as a dot on Fort Worth's western edge. Most Texans couldn't find it on a map because it looked like a place frozen in 1955, with tree-lined streets, arched entryways, circular driveways that signal wealth without screaming it. The residents are old Fort Worth oil, gas, and real estate money that got established back when Dallas was still figuring out whether to compete or cooperate. And these families chose Fort Worth specifically because the culture here doesn't require performing wealth the way Dallas does with its charity galas and social hierarchies. But here's what's genuinely wild about Westover Hills. There are 0 restaurants because 580 people can't support a single commercial business. 0 shopping because residents just drive into Fort Worth proper when they need anything. And the entire social scene happens at private estates where the same families have been gathering for generations without worrying about cameras or outsiders documenting anything. Fort Worth's business leadership retreats here when they want to disappear, living in homes that have been in families for decades and get passed down like heirlooms, rather than sold when real estate markets peak. Think about that. These people are so wealthy they view houses as permanent family assets instead of investments to flip, creating the kind of continuity that newer money can't buy, regardless of net worth. Dallas gets headlines, Houston gets oil recognition, but Westover Hills just exists quietly housing 580 people who've never needed anyone to know where they live. That's not modesty, that's confidence from generational wealth that predates social media by a century. Now imagine Houston took that same invisibility and added polo fields that cost more than most people's houses. That's exactly where we're headed next. Number 9. Hunters Creek Village, Houston. Hunters Creek Village has polo fields inside a gated community, which tells you everything about the filtering mechanism at work here. If you can't afford horses that cost more than Ferraris, you're not getting in. The memorial area isn't one neighborhood, it's 6 separate villages with their own governments: Hunters Creek, Bunker Hill, Piney Point, Hedwig, Hillshire, Spring Valley, and if you just say memorial without specifying which one, everyone knows you're not actually from Houston. Hunters Creek houses about 4,400 residents with 24-hour security, gardens maintained by full-time crews, and the kind of privacy that oil executives need after building empires that made their names recognizable enough that anonymity became valuable. Homes run around $2 million for estates built, assuming you'll host extended family and entertain people whose last names appear on downtown buildings. The buyers are oil tycoons from the wildcatting era, energy executives climbing corporate ranks, and families whose wealth predates tech booms by generations, and who view Austin money as cute but temporary. The country club requires sponsor letters from members who've known your family for years, not just proof you can write the check. While Culicata estates inside the village offer extra seclusion for families who think gated community security isn't enough. What separates Hunters Creek from wealthier spots on this list is accessibility. You need $2 million in connections, but you don't need 4th-generation Houston royalty status. Just serious money that prefers polo to publicity. You know what's even more interesting? The polo fields aren't just recreation. They're economic gatekeeping disguised as amenities. Maintaining horses eliminates anyone who can't afford 6-figure annual costs just for a hobby. However, polo fields are nothing compared to what happens when you ban commerce entirely. Number 8. University Park, Dallas. University Park shares Highland Park Independent School District, the same elite schools. But homes cost $2 million instead of Highland Park's $4 million, creating what smart Dallas families recognize as straight arbitrage where you get 95% of the benefits while saving hundreds of thousands. SMU sits directly inside the town, which either adds energy and prestige or creates parking chaos depending on whether you value university proximity over convenience. The 24,000 residents skew younger than Highland Park, median age 38 versus 45, and they're mostly young families with serious money who figured out the value equation, finance, and healthcare professionals who want prestige without peak pricing, and SMU faculty whose side businesses went public and made salaries irrelevant. They chose University Park because HPISD delivers identical educational outcomes, top 1% test scores, Ivy League acceptance rates, but the culture feels less formal, meaning you can attend neighborhood events without feeling like you're performing at a charity gala where everyone's mentally tracking donations. Snyder Plaza offers shopping and dining, where private equity conversations happen over coffee instead of formal club settings, while tree-lined streets create walkability that new suburbs can't replicate, regardless of developer budgets. Property values jumped 75% in 5 years, proving the market sees this as prime real estate, not Highland Park's second choice. What makes University Park work is simple math. Elite schools, established community, pricing that saves you hundreds of thousands while delivering essentially the same life. Sometimes the value play is the smart play even when everyone involved has 8-figure net worths. Stop thinking about this as the cheaper option. Think about it as getting the same product for 50% off because you're willing to live one neighborhood over. But value plays only matter when you're choosing between options. Our next spot doesn't care what you can afford. Number 7. Bunker Hill Village, Houston. Bunker Hill Village was named the richest small town in Texas in 2024, which sounds impressive until you realize nobody outside Houston has heard of it despite probably driving past it constantly. Bunker Hill sits in Memorial with 3,700 residents, homes averaging $2.5 million, and the understated elegance that happens when oil money decides flashy is for people who need validation. The only Frank Lloyd Wright house in Houston sits here, providing architectural credibility that new developments literally cannot buy because Wright's dead and his work carries historical weight that transcends aesthetics. Energy sector leadership lives here alongside old oil families and people whose names appear on buildings but never social media. And they chose Bunker Hill because the village actively works to preserve what their official website calls a quiet wooded environment, meaning maintaining serenity requires deliberate effort, not just passive zoning. The social scene happens entirely through private estates and country clubs, because when your neighborhood is wealthy enough that retail would lower property values, dinner parties replace restaurants. Memorial Park sits minutes away for outdoor recreation, and what separates Bunker Hill from other memorial pockets isn't just nice houses. It's statistically significant wealth concentration that shows up in census data and makes economists pay attention. The village bans all commercial development permanently, ensuring residential character stays protected regardless of future economic pressure. Bunker Hill doesn't market itself because it doesn't need to. If you're wealthy enough to live here, someone you know already does and can explain why it matters. Here's the question nobody asks. Why would a neighborhood actively refuse businesses that could generate tax revenue? Because when everyone's already rich, protecting the vibe matters more than money. Now watch what happens when Dallas builds on multi-acre lots. Number 6. Preston Hollow, Dallas. George W. Bush lives in Preston Hollow, which tells you everything about a neighborhood that values both serious security and the ability to live relatively normally despite Secret Service permanently stationed nearby. Preston Hollow sprawls north of downtown Dallas with homes averaging $3 million, though luxury estates regularly hit $10 million when buyers want property that accommodates full-time staff, guest houses, and security infrastructure beyond cameras. The residents include former presidents, Mark Cuban when he's actually in town, Cowboys and Rangers players who found Highland Park too formal for athletes wanting to relax, and executives whose wealth requires multi-acre lots. They chose Preston Hollow because expansive estates create privacy through distance rather than walls, while the less formal culture means you can host weekend barbecues without neighbors judging your caterer choice. The neighborhood feels modern compared to old Dallas money, attracting recently earned wealth rather than inherited trust funds, managed across generations. Dallas Country Club provides networking infrastructure where deals happen between golf rounds, while proximity to business districts keeps commutes reasonable despite the suburban feel. What makes Preston Hollow number 6 is the combination of celebrity residence, modern wealth, and space that allows privacy without isolation, You're not in some tiny exclusive enclave. You're in a sprawling area where your neighbors might include former world leaders. Think about what that does to dinner parties. Highland Park families discuss banking dynasties. Preston Hollow, families discuss policy with people who actually made it. Both are wealthy, one has history, the other has relevance. But Dallas sprawl looks modest next to what Houston families do with serious land. Number 5. Tanglewood, Houston. Average Tanglewood lot. 16,500 square feet, meaning you're buying enough land to build a compound before discussing the actual house. Tanglewood sits east of River Oaks with homes averaging $2.5 million for custom estates built mostly in the 80s and 90s, attracting younger wealth less interested in tradition. Energy executives who made fortunes in the last 30 years live alongside real estate developers and corporate leadership who wanted space for custom architecture rather than historic preservation restrictions. They chose Tanglewood because River Oaks comes with expectations, social obligations, charitable boards, tradition that some embrace and others find suffocating. Tanglewood offers similar pricing, dramatically larger lots, and complete freedom to design estates reflecting personal taste rather than inherited aesthetics. Average home: 5,400 square feet with handcrafted details and soaring ceilings taking months to install. Because these aren't tract homes, they're one-of-one estates where architects work directly with families. New construction ranges $1.5 to $5 million depending on specs, attracting newer Houston wealth wanting homes reflecting success rather than preserving someone else's 1940s vision. Here's the number that matters. Stop looking at total prices, focus on land cost per square foot. Tanglewood land, $50 per square foot. Typical Texas suburb, $8 per square foot. You're paying 6 times more for dirt before building anything, purely because the address matters to people who understand Houston wealth geography. Close to the Galleria for shopping, Memorial Park for recreation, energy corridor for work. Accessibility, isolated enclaves can't match. What separates Tanglewood from River Oaks isn't wealth, it's timeline. River Oaks represents a century of oil money carefully preserved. Tanglewood represents 3 decades aggressively building new fortunes. Both work. You choose based on whether you value history or square footage. But even sprawling custom estates look ordinary when a neighborhood makes retail literally illegal. Number 4. Piney Point Village, Houston. Piney Point Village legally bans all commercial development, which is either residential paradise or dystopian isolation, depending on how you feel about neighborhoods forbidding coffee shops. Piney Point houses 3,000 residents with homes averaging $4 million, custom estates on massive lots under towering pine trees, and seclusion that happens when municipal code legally prevents retail anywhere within village boundaries. Energy executives live alongside old oil families and people whose names appear on buildings but never social media. They chose Piney Point because if River Oaks is where Houston elite gets seen at galas, Piney Point is where they disappear completely. Long driveways wind through pine forests before revealing estates not designed for street visibility, while lot sizes create distance that makes privacy automatic rather than achieved through gates. Many properties stay in families for decades, passed down by generations valuing stability over maximizing sale prices during booms when developers offered premium dollars to tear down and rebuild. Social dynamics happen through private connections and country clubs because when your neighborhood legally prohibits businesses, dinner parties replace restaurants for networking. Memorial Park sits minutes away, the Galleria close enough for convenience when retail is actually needed. What makes Piney Point number 4 is the deliberate choice to ban commerce entirely, not just discourage it. Most wealthy neighborhoods lack commercial development because residents don't want it. But Piney Point wrote prohibition into law, ensuring future generations can't rezone for mixed use when economics shift. That's not protecting property values, that's protecting a lifestyle that literally cannot exist if Starbucks opens. The families here believe that trade-off is worth making permanently. You know what that signals? When you're wealthy enough, eliminating all commerce from your site becomes more valuable than convenience. Now watch what Austin tech money built trying to escape the city they created. Number 3. Westlake, Austin. We're talking about Austin, but not downtown condos or East Austin renovations tech workers brag about on LinkedIn. We're talking Westlake in the hills where tech executives escape the chaos they created. Westlake sits west of Austin with homes averaging $4.5 million on lots often spanning full acres, with hill country views no downtown high-rise replicates. Tech executives live alongside Dell and Oracle leadership and VCs who fund Austin startups but have zero interest living near the traffic those startups create when successful. They chose Westlake because Austin proper is expensive from demand. Thousands moved there after podcasters promoted it, driving prices through volume. Westlake is expensive from exclusivity. People here don't want to be in Austin. They want access without traffic, construction noise, and crowds that come from being the city everyone suddenly moved to after Rogan mentioned it repeatedly. Ena's ISD ranks among Texas's best, mattering enormously when raising children rather than attending SXSW. Families value hiking. Barton Creek Greenbelt through limestone canyons, Lake Austin access for weekend boats, and space letting them forget a booming metro sits 20 minutes away. Here's the split nobody mentions. Austin tech workers live in dense urban housing tweeting about loving city life, while Austin tech executives live in Westlake on acre lots driving in when board meetings require presence. Both claim to live in Austin, only one is telling the truth about their zip code. What makes Westlake number 3 is concentration of actual tech wealth versus employment. These are people who built companies, not who work at them earning six figures. When headlines said wealth moved to Austin, they meant it moved to hills outside Austin where property looks nothing like the urban density everyone associates with the city. Think about the irony. Tech billionaires spend years promoting Austin's urban core, then immediately move to suburbs the moment they're successful enough to afford it. That's not hypocrisy, that's just understanding the difference between where you work and where you actually want to live. But Austin's hill country estates are newcomers compared to what Dallas built a century ago. Number 2. Highland Park, Dallas. Multi-generational Dallas families built Highland Park a century ago, and their great-grandchildren still occupy the same estates because moving is apparently for people without roots. Highland Park commands $4 million average home prices with its own police force, own municipal services, and control over zoning that keeps everything pristine in ways regular cities can't achieve. Population stays under 9,000 despite being surrounded by Dallas sprawl because strict development rules prevent density from creeping in. Residents are banking families whose grandfathers financed Dallas's growth, corporate dynasties running the same companies for decades, and people whose social calendars get set a year ahead because missing expected charity gala attendance gets noticed by neighbors whose opinions matter. This isn't casual wealth where business casual works. This is formal, traditional, Dallas money where country club memberships get inherited. Stop thinking Highland Park is about houses. It's about schools. Always has been. HPISD locks in generational wealth through educational outcomes justifying paying millions purely for access. Families buy, so children attend HPISD. Then those children grow up and buy for their own children, repeating endlessly. HPISD test scores, top 1% nationally. College acceptance, Ivy League standard. Highland Park homes with HPISD, $4 million average. Dallas homes without HPISD, $800,000 average. You're not paying for granite, you're paying for your children's future. Highland Park Village operates as America's first outdoor shopping center in Spanish colonial architecture that hasn't needed updating because timeless design doesn't follow trends. Annual Christmas tree lighting draws crowds treating the event like social registry, where being seen matters as much as festivities. SMU football provides weekend networking in stadium boxes. Dallas Country Club facilitates deals over golf. What makes Highland Park number 2 is century-old prestige, ironclad zoning preventing change, and social infrastructure so embedded that leaving feels like abandoning heritage. Highland Park doesn't need Austin's tech headlines or Houston's oil publicity. It's been the Dallas address for over a century, and families here don't see that changing. Here's what separates Highland Park from everywhere else. Other neighborhoods have wealthy residents. Highland Park has wealthy dynasties, where leaving would require explaining to your children why you broke a century-long family tradition. But even Highland Park Century looks recent compared to our number 1 spot. Number 1. River Oaks, Houston. Fourth-generation Texas families occupy the same River Oaks estates their great-grandparents commissioned in the 1940s, which tells you everything about what this neighborhood values. Staying put matters more than money when your address is your heritage. Homes average $3 million, but that's meaningless when luxury estates routinely trade for $10 million or higher, and wealth here measures in generations rather than recent exits. River Oaks covers 3 zip codes filled with energy CEOs, whose names appear on museum wings and hospital buildings, not social media. The buyers are oil families from wildcatting days who turned Houston into energy capital, banking executives running institutions that financed Houston's transformation, and corporate leadership whose companies shaped modern Texas. This is old money in the truest sense, not just inherited wealth, but inherited addresses where moving feels like betraying family history. They stay because River Oaks isn't about money. You can have $20 million and still feel out of place if you don't understand social fabric woven over a century. Country club memberships require more than checks. They require sponsor letters from families who've known yours for generations. Events matter more than anything trending on Twitter. Homes from the 40s and 50s sit on enormous lots under oak trees growing 80-plus years. Properties passed down like titles rather than sold to highest bidders. While Austin made headlines about tech relocations, River Oaks didn't blink. While everyone debated remote work's real estate impact, River Oaks families stayed exactly where they've always been, in estates housing their bloodlines longer than most companies have existed. What makes River Oaks indisputably number 1 is who chose to stay when they could live anywhere. Fourth-generation families whose great-grandparents built Houston, energy executives running companies powering America, banking leadership whose decisions shape Texas's economy. These are people who don't need to prove wealth because addresses do it automatically. River Oaks represents everything Austin isn't. Established, not emerging, traditional, not disruptive, generational, not transactional. When tech billionaires tweet about moving to Texas, River Oaks families don't respond because they were already here building the foundation. That's not arrogance, that's reality. When your family's been wealthy longer than Twitter's existed as a company, you don't need to announce anything. And that's a wrap on the most secret regions in Texas where the billionaires actually hang out. If this changed how you think about Texas wealth, like the video, and don't forget to drop a comment telling us which spot shocked you the most. The 580-person town or the place where retail is literally illegal. For more such interesting peeks into how wealth moves across America, take a look at Global Status. Catch you next time.